The chamber doors slammed shut behind me before I could run, and the registry officiant already had the binding cord in his hand. My name is Vale Shira, and in 3 minutes, I was supposed to be bonded for life to a man I had never chosen and never wanted. My people do not fall in love. We are matched by an algorithm at birth, our scent locked to a stranger's blood before we even take our first breath. There is no asking, there is no refusing. There has never, in the history of the Ashvale Dominion, been a single Vulpine who said no. I almost became the first, right there, by bolting for the side door like a coward. A guard caught my wrist before I reached it. "Princess," he said, not unkindly, "the ceremony has already begun." My betrothed stood at the altar stone, arms folded, watching me the way someone watches a malfunctioning appliance. Lord Thren had never once smiled at me. He didn't need to. The algorithm didn't care about smiles. I thought about Jamie. 3 days earlier, I had asked him a question I now regretted, because it had cracked something open in me that could not be closed again. We were standing on the observation deck of the human outpost, the stars sliding past below us, and I asked him, the way I'd ask anyone, who his registry match was. He laughed, not at me exactly, but like the question itself was funny. "I don't have one," he said. "I just pick who I want to be with." I told him that sounded like chaos. "Sometimes it is," he admitted, "but it's mine." That single sentence had been sitting in my chest for 3 days like a stone I couldn't swallow or spit out. And now, standing in front of the altar with the cord already looping toward my wrist, it came roaring back up my throat. "Wait," I said. The officiant froze mid-chant. Lord Thren's eyebrows rose a fraction, the most emotion I had ever seen on his face. "Princess, the binding cannot be paused once." "I want to speak," I said, louder now, and my voice did not shake the way I expected it to. The hall went silent. Elders in the front row exchanged glances. My mother, the queen, sat rigid on her throne, her claws pressing white marks into the armrest. "I have a question," I said, "and I want an honest answer before this cord touches my skin. Is this bond mine, or is it the Dominion's?" The officiant blinked. "The registry decides compatibility based on—" "That is not what I asked." An old scholar near the back, one of the few who had ever spoken plainly to me, rose slowly to his feet. His name was Corvain, and he had taught me history when I was young enough to still ask why, instead of accepting answers. "She deserves the truth," Corvain said. "The registry algorithm was written by the founding houses 300 years ago. It has never been independently reviewed. It is always, without exception, paired heirs with political allies." A murmur rolled through the hall like wind through dry grass. "That is treasonous speculation," snapped one of the elders. "It is documented fact," Corvain said, and did not sit down. My mother's claws dug deeper into the throne. She did not look at me. She looked at Lord Thren's father, who sat 3 seats away with a face like carved stone. I felt something shift under my feet, like the floor of the world, tilting just slightly. "I am not accusing anyone of lying to me," I said, though my heart was slamming hard enough that I was certain the whole room could hear it. "I am asking whether I am allowed to choose differently." "That is all. A simple question." "There is no mechanism for refusal," the officiant said. "It has never been attempted." "Then I will attempt it," I said. Lord Thren finally spoke, his voice flat as always. "You would humiliate both our houses for a passing feeling?" "I would rather feel something true and messy," I said, "than feel nothing at all and call it destiny." He studied me for a long moment, and for the first time, something like relief crossed his features, quick and quiet, gone before anyone else could catch it. "For what it's worth," he said, "I never wanted this either. My match was decided when I was 2 days old. I have spent my whole life pretending that was enough." The room erupted into overlapping voices, elders arguing with elders, guards looking to my mother for instructions she wasn't giving. I stood in the center of it, shaking, waiting for the ground to open and swallow me the way it should have, according to every rule I had ever known. Instead, my mother rose from her throne. The hall fell silent instantly. Whatever else she was, my mother commanded a room the way weather commands a coastline. "Clear the chamber," she said. "Everyone but my daughter." They filed out slowly, reluctant, throwing glances over their shoulders. Corvain lingered at the door until my mother gave him a small nod, and then he too was gone. When it was just the two of us, she descended the steps of the throne and stood in front of me, closer than she had stood to me in years. "Do you understand what you have just done?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "I broke something that was never supposed to break." "You broke something that should have been broken 300 years ago," she said, and I nearly staggered at the crack in her voice. "I bonded with your father because the registry told me to. I never once asked myself if I loved him. By the time I realized I might have, he was gone, and I told myself the ache I felt was grief for a bond, not grief for a person I never got the chance to know." I had never heard my mother speak like this. Not once, in my entire life. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked. "Because saying it meant admitting the foundation of our whole society might be a lie dressed up as biology," she said. "It is easier to inherit a cage than to question who built it. So what happens now?" She exhaled, long and slow, and for a moment, she looked less like a queen and more like a tired woman who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. "Now," she said, "we find out if this dominion can survive without pretending choice is dangerous." She ordered the registry records opened to independent review that same night, over the furious objections of half the founding houses. Lord Thren, to everyone's shock, testified in support of it, and afterward, he shook my hand and told me he intended to travel, actually travel, somewhere the algorithm had never sent him. I did not run to Jamie that night, tempting as it was. I sat instead with Corvain in the old archive, reading 300 years of paired names and match scores by lamplight, watching how neatly they lined up with political marriages, land disputes, and quiet debts between houses. It should have made me angry. Mostly it made me sad, for every Vulpine before me who never got to ask the question I had just asked. It was 2 days later, walking the same observation deck where this had all started, that I found Jamie again. He was leaning against the rail, looking down at the slow turn of the planet below us. "I heard what happened," he said. "Word travels fast even between species, apparently." "I didn't do it for you," I said, before he could assume otherwise. "I want to be clear about that." "I didn't think you did," he said, and he meant it, I could tell. "You did it for you. That's the only reason it counts." I stood beside him at the rail, the stars sliding by exactly the way they had 3 days earlier, except nothing about me felt the same. "I don't know what I want yet," I admitted. "I have spent my whole life being told what to want. I don't even know how to begin choosing." "Nobody does, at first," he said. "You just start. You get it wrong sometimes. You try again." "That sounds exhausting." "It is," he said, and grinned. "It's also kind of the whole point." We stood there a while longer, not talking, just watching the planet turn, and for once, the silence didn't feel like something imposed on me. It felt like something I had chosen, one quiet breath at a time. Somewhere behind me, in the Dominion halls I had grown up in, 300 years of certainty were being pulled apart and questioned for the first time. I didn't know yet what would grow back in its place. I didn't know if I would ever bond with anyone, human or Vulpine, or if I even wanted to. But for the first time in my life, that uncertainty belonged to me. And that, more than any algorithm ever had, felt like the truest thing I had ever known.